All right.
Oh, I'm not sure about that because I've been doing a lot of photography lately, which I'm going to talk about in terms of Noir Z. But yeah,
Yeah,
we'll
yeah,
talk
yeah.
about it. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So sorry to interrupt. I know
No,
we
no.
were requested to make small talk for an hour, but we'll filter in our small talk throughout our conversation. So I think it's a good time to get started. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Outlaw Press's Pushing the Boundaries of Small Press panel. My name is Tali Voron, and I'm the founder and publisher of the Soapbox Press and also a member of the Meet the Presses Collective. And I'm so excited to be your host this afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us at our first Indie Lit Symposium from November 26th to 29th. We're offering a series of panels on a variety of topics related to small press. Be sure to check out the schedule on our website and see what's coming up throughout the weekend. And also be sure to check out our indie market, where we'll be featuring 2 titles from all of the participating presses. If you'd like to purchase any of the titles, you'll be able to select them on our website, and Meet the Presses will sort that order out for you. But of course, we also highly encourage you to visit all of the presses' websites directly. Before we go any further, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge that although we are gathering in a virtual space, Meet the Presses conducts the bulk of their activity in Toronto, which rests on the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples, and is now home to many diverse First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit. We encourage you to learn the history of the land you are currently on as we reflect on the past and acknowledge the changes that can be made going forward in the process of truth and reconciliation. The first 30 minutes of the event will include a lively moderated discussion with our panelists, Amanda Earl, Brian Dedora, Derek Beaulieu, Kyle Flemmer, Sacha Archer, and J.W. Currie as we discuss pushing boundaries in small press. When we reach the Q&A portion of the event, which will take place during the last 15 to 20 minutes, you're also welcome to use the Q&A box to ask your question. If you'd like to chat with other attendees or with the panelists or myself, be sure to use the chat box throughout the event, and make sure if you're leaving a message that you would like everyone to see, then select to all panelists and attendees. This event is closed captioned, and to enable captions, just press the closed captions button on the bottom of your screen. It is now my distinct pleasure to introduce our panelists who have already joined us, and you see them on video as well. So Derek Beaulieu is the publisher and editor of Banff, Alberta-based No Press, publishing experimental and visual poetry in a multiplicity of forms with over 350 titles since 2005. Brian Dedora is a member of the editorial collective of Noir Z with Hart Brody and Bill Bissett to publish works that push the boundaries of visual poetry since 2018. Kyle Flemmer is the editor-in-chief of The Blasted Tree, publisher of experimental fiction, poetry, nonfiction, and visual work by Canadian and international writers since 2014. Sacha Archer is founder and editor of Ontario's Simulacrum Press, producing experimental books, chapbooks, objects, and ephemera by Canadian and international writers and artists. Amanda Earl is editor and publisher of Ottawa-based AngelHousePress, producing scores of chapbooks of edgy poetry, fiction, comics, and memoirs since 2007 by writers from Canada and beyond. J.W. Currie is the editor and publisher at Room 302 Books, which, since 1979, has published many hundreds of chapbooks, objects, and ephemera by Canadian and international writers and artists. So thank you all so much for being here today and for taking part in this conversation.
Thanks. Good to be here.
So let's just dive right into it. I know I gave a very brief introduction to all of you, but again, that is brief and definitely not a fulsome description of all that you do. So I'd love if each of you can give us a brief synopsis or introduction to the kind of work that your press produces. And maybe Amanda, we'll start with you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks to Meet the Presses for holding the Indie Lit Symposium and inviting Angel House Press. Thanks to Tali for moderating and Gary for pulling the strings in the background like the good puppeteer that he is. To my fellow panelists for taking part. And thanks for everyone who's watching and attending and putting interesting things in the chat that I'm not paying attention to, but maybe I'll look at later. So I established Angel House Press in 2007. We've published and featured both online and in print work by over 600 writers and artists from 28 countries around the world. We began as a publisher of chapbooks by local poets, but we quickly turned our focus on the world at large, ways of connecting, supporting, and fostering community. This led to online magazines, a podcast, essay and interview series, crowdsourcing and making publicly available a list of visual poetry presses and journals, a map of women and gender nonconforming poets, and other things too. I thought I would just go through the highlights of and memories of some of the things we published, but because I thought I had 5 minutes, but if I go on too long, just, pull the plug. That's okay, I won't mind. So Whack of Clouds is the first chapbook that wasn't by me that we published, and we published it in 2008. It features work by other my fellow poetry workshop participants. So it's me, Marcus McCann, Nicholas Lee, Pearl Peary, Roland Prevost, and so it's got like a card deck kind of theme. And we did 54 copies. So I'm the Ice of Hertz. I don't know if you can see a card back there. And yeah, other people are like Marcus McCann, or Nicholas Lee is the Whore of Spaces. Marcus McCann is the Spleen of Demons. Pearl Peary, the Hive of Clouds, and Roland Prevost, the Whack of Spaces. So we have a kind of a playful way about it. Afterlife is a chapbook that we published a few years back by Jennifer K. Dick, and it was our first and last bilingual chapbook. And she's an American writer living in France. Afterlife is a lyrical reimagining of the invention of drawing. So that's another one that we've done as well. And Jennifer will be on the podcast that we run to, the Small Machine Talks, in January. I'm hoping to talk about her book, Lilith. The Tale of the Clam Ear, which is by Salvadorian, I've cut it upside down. It's by Salvadorian Scottish-American writer and artist Christine Sloan Stoddard, is dedicated to anyone who has ever been told their body was wrong. And then we have other chapbooks too, like Andante by Hiromi Suzuki. It's a visual poetry collage chapbook. She's a writer and artist living in Tokyo, Japan. And we have a lot of other chapbooks as well that I could talk about. But I also want to talk a little bit about our online stuff as well. So in 2008, we started the annual online magazine Experiment O to celebrate the art of risk. And we're going to be publishing our 13th issue any day now. Actually, my husband Charles is just finishing up the final touches with their 13 people we're publishing from around the world: Germany, Australia, Ireland, England, Canada, and the USA. And from Experimento, I just went to one issue, issue 7, and I'm looking at some of the highlights from that. Well, they're all highlights for me, but some of the work. The Asemic Calligraphic Gestures and Imaginary Cities of Ariel Gonzalez Losada, a collaboration of Sachiko Murakami and A. Rawlings in their eco-poetic work. The Asemic writing of Donna Mayura. I think the first time I published her was in 2015 with Fragile Glyph-Covered Eggshells, a piece entitled Chaos Within. And in 2009, we began the annual online site nationalpoetrymonth.ca as a response to the institutional celebration, which tended to be poetry that started on the left-hand side of the page, text-based only, and centered on a geographic region. I wanted to explore what poetry could be and to push against borders and boundaries. So every day in April, we publish poetry and visual poetry and things no one knows what to call. My favorite response from folks on social media is an outraged or quizzical, "But that isn't poetry." I love it when that happens. I want to wear a shirt that says, "But that isn't poetry." We published this beautiful color and tactile collage called Drift by Hiromi Suzuki, who sent me work unsolicited. We published her in Experimento and her chapbook Andante, since I mentioned. And since then, I've been following her work and collecting it. I think Donna Mayura was another woman I hadn't really heard of until she submitted work for nationalpoetrymonth.ca. In 2017, we published a celebration of women. We published videos by Charlotte Hene and Rua Al-Jed. In 2008, we published a short film called Bilingual Poet's Dilemma, made by Anya Urbanowska and Sandra Allen, of deaf poet Donna Williams signing a poem by K. Yvonne Strain. And we published Ali Fleming's moving piece, "For this poem to exist, I have no choice but to suffer this grief." And then the Nth Degree spoken word poem Sugarcane, which is I've always loved, and I asked him if we could publish that video on nationalpoetrymonth.ca. In 2020, we had a Nelson Ball tribute issue, Ode to the Small, with poems by Dag T. Straumsvag, and for example, who Stuart, I think, passed along the invitation to, and Stuart Ross, and Karen Massey's gorgeous ceramic pieces, Fragments from the Dreams of Water. And I haven't even talked about all the people we've interviewed on the podcast, the Small Machine Talks, but I'll stop there, and thanks for your time and attention.
Thanks so much, Amanda. So I'm just going to go in order now, continuing of how I see everyone on my screen. So John, do you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. Room 302, Room 302 Books is actually a bookstore, but I also issue publications of various natures through that imprint. But it exists sort of to offer the stuff that I see as significant in Canadian literary history, along with my own work that I've published by a lot of people who are involved in that stuff. And the actual imprints that I've been responsible for since late '78. I was going to read off the list, but it's too long. I'm not going to do that. But there's a lot of material out there that I've produced and that other people have produced, and you know, a lot of people on this panel. That it just falls between the cracks, and there needs to be someone to have that stuff available for others. And so, to my frustration, I have that job. Sort of look myself as cultural factotum, and that's that. I do what's necessary.
Thanks so much, John. And Derek, how about you?
No presses. I've published no press imprints since 2005. Before that was House Press from 97 to 2004. And I published the work that I want to read, basically. The mandate, there's no mandate for no press. It's work that excites me, works that I want to read, works that I would hope that other people would want to read too, in formats that seem appropriate or, you know, achievable. And it's, in a lot of ways, that's it. I mean, like, that's all you, like, starting from that, it can expand in all sorts of ways. But, you know, I publish the work I want to read, and I publish the work I want other people. I would hope other people would.
I like that. Thanks so much. And Brian, what about you?
Well, I'm one of the editors of Noir Z, and I came in a wee bit later after Art Brody, Bill Bissett. Daniel Bradley was there for a bit in his solo career now. I was invited in because the Hart Brody put together an exhibition called Concrete is Porous to do with bringing together old, older and younger emerging, if you wish, practitioners in concrete poetry. We were a bit anarchic in terms of, we pulled a little joke in that the numbers are not sequential, so that it just screws it up a little bit. We've done some very classic concrete work, Gustav Moran, messy classic from Carl Becker. And then we've done, you know, Kate Siclossi, Danny Spinoza. We've also done, and this is a little favorite push of mine, to do work with photographs. We first did one with Sacha Archer, an event poem. Hey there, how are you? And then I've done a few photograph things as well. We've done Franco Cortese, photographs generated by a computer program. And that's an area of interest of mine to push that. We've reached out to Victor Loschetten Press in Gothenburg, Sweden, Anna Hednerud and David Kuhlen, asking for some work from them. We recently did a work by Grant Wilkins, actually an explosion of comic book and color, of just really great stuff. Hart Brody is writes ads, visual ads. And so his graphic design and his ability with color has been really amazing. I once said in a little talk at the indie market about an explosion of formats. In my day, earlies in the 70s and 80s, it was Sirlock Blonde and Saddle Stitch Staple 8.5, 11. Now we have all this amazing new ways of publishing and making what we make. So we sometimes ask for submissions. We're getting a few submissions. I'd like to see a lot more. I'd like to see submissions from people of of color, BOP, BOC, and indigenous and black. I want to see and hear these people. What are they doing? Because I'd like to do something about putting it out there. So that's sort of where we're at right now. COVID-19, of course, is we don't have a face-to-face meeting, which I really regret, because that was sort of a lot of generator of ideas, although just sitting around and blabbing and having fun. Anyways, in the same place as everybody else right now, I think.
Thanks so much, Brian. And Sacha, what about you?
I publish stuff that challenges me. It's a lot of it is visual poetry, but not all of it. I definitely welcome text. You know, again, we'll bring up Franco Cortese. I did one of his not too long ago, or Aline Tabeos. Yeah, I don't know, just simply experimental work, though we talked about that in some emails prior to this, some contention over the word experimental, but
we may do some more of that, actually.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, I hope some of those emails leak into here. Yeah, but actually Simulacrum started with like a certain vision I had, and it was more like a thought of outsider work, and I started to reach out to people. I wanted work that I saw that wasn't necessarily thought of as poetry at all, and then I wanted to present it in that frame. But that totally failed, because every time I reached out, people said, "Oh, maybe, yeah," and then they would just ignore me. So I started to shift my kind of totally ephemeral vision into something more concrete, and yeah, that's about it.
Thank you so much, Sacha. And Kyle, how about you?
Yeah, hello. Well, as you mentioned, the Blasted Tree started in 2014. Kind of kicked it off while I was doing my undergrad in Montreal. I saw some chapbooks on the display rack at the local print shop across the street from the school. I'm like, hey, I want to make some of those. And so I started printing some of my own work and some work from other students in the class, and it just sort of snowballed from there. After school, I moved back to Calgary and met Derek, and sort of reacted to the work that he was doing and took my press in a different direction, working on limited editions of chapbooks and all sorts of other print ephemera, essentially whatever I could get my hands on. And yeah, I say we publish primarily visual poetry and poetry, though I'm open to all sorts of stuff that, like, I want your brain breaking stuff. I think the most gratifying kind of submission for me is when I get something that is truly out of the box, and in the cover letter or whatever, the author has said, I truly do not know what to do with this or where it should go. And I that's where I come in. That's what I love the most, is being able to turn it into something equally wild and wacky, but still suitable to the work. And so that's what the Blasted Tree is all about.
Did anybody here start their press like not wanting a place to put their own work?
Oh yeah, sure. What we did at Noir when we were doing some of our own work was to make an imprint that would be for that, which was loop simple, and then doing other people's work as well. But so it was separated essentially. Okay.
Great, that's a really great question. Anyone else? Or no?
Yeah, well, I have to admit that I started in order to print my own stuff because of previous publication experience that was unfortunate. I had not been editorially guided as well as I should have. And I thought, no, this is wrong. But then I think it was within 11 publications. It was like, this doing just my own stuff is not right. And at that time, I was, this was during the vagrancy years, and at the end of that, I was on the street in Vancouver when I started for appearance, actually. And that was where my initial source of material came from, was other people in the vagrant community that were artists.
I think we've all started out publishing our own work,
Yeah.
just to get something going on. Do you know what I mean?
But then rhizoming out from there, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
I started because I was running bywords.ca, a literary site and online magazine and a print journal starting in 2003, and I couldn't publish my own poetry through that. I didn't want to, and also it's a collective and it gets money from the city and stuff like that, so we don't publish work by the editors there. I did need a different outlet for my own work, and I started AngelHousePress thinking that I was just going to use it for my own work, and then I started to want to publish other people as well who didn't necessarily satisfy the requirements for bywords.ca, so I started a little differently.
Very cool. And then how do you all approach, I guess, the whole process of publishing somebody else rather than your own work? How does it differ? Or does it differ?
Yeah,
or surprising.
Somebody else. It's somebody else.
It differs in that you have to, or for me anyway, it differs in that I have to have a greater responsibility toward the fidelity of the idea of what it is I'm dealing with by someone else. So it involves really getting into somebody else's head. Like, remember when I did You're the Mouse, Brian?
Yeah.
Like, book is a virtual reconstruction of your notebook, put on nicer paper and blah, 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 right? And with printing processes instead of, by hand and cut out.
And also the way it was bound. I mean, the book became incredibly tactile. And it just as a bit of reference, it's a story about a Beatrix Potter mouse, all beautiful and fantasized, and then taking out your box of seeds to kill it, essentially. So it had a slightly bent proposition to begin with, and John did a marvelous job because there's a lovely contrast between the tactility of the book and then actually its content.
It's good you bring up binding, right? I mean, that's a big part of what we do. Designing and binding, right? And when someone else's work comes in, you're like, John, you're talking about the fidelity to their idea, right? And getting into their head, and like, I know for me, and that means figuring out what design and binding, right? That's good, something to complement that work.
How
that makes
can
sense.
This realize itself with me as facilitator?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Your role becomes bigger than yourself, and I mean, like, you have to look outside of your own brain to start thinking about, how do you want to interact with other human beings, and the text. You have to start. I mean, you have to start caring about somebody other than yourself, and as simple as that may sound, like, you have to. It's bigger than you. And so it takes on a little bit more responsibility, and it takes on a little bit more, like, there's less of a sense, well, if I fuck it up, it's just me. No, like, if I fuck it up and it's somebody else, that's way,
one has the choice.
You can't do that.
Yeah, one has the choice when you're dealing with your own errors, but
yeah.
Let somebody else to that.
That was always an exciting moment at when we were all together, and something would come in, we were going to do it, or somebody proposes a publication, and then to start discussing how it was going to look. How was it going to be a little booklet, or was it going to be cards in an envelope? Was it going to be this? Was it going to be how much color, no color, blah, blah, blah. That was, to me, always very exciting, because you were actually really burrowing down into who's who and what's what here, and what's the best way to do it.
And that's where it pays to have a good idea of what might be possible and not be locked into assumptions or presumptions concerning form, right? And to have the ability to develop the skills necessary to realize those ideals.
Yeah. Kyle,
which is an interesting issue because you start learning through other people's work.
Oh, yeah.
You know, you learn like, what can I do, or what can a poem be, or what can a publication be, by playing with other people's toys. You know, like you get this thing and it's like, now what? And that now what teaches you so much about yourself as well as about others. And that to me, that's the big difference.
Yeah, the term we use in the band, because that's an extremely immediate collaborative process, is intermultifrenia, because you're retaining your own sense of self, but you're also projecting it at others while you're taking theirs in, right? So you've got this group mind thing sort of that's going on, which is a little bit, flaky, but nevertheless, it happens. This stuff happens. And it's really interesting to be able to get outside of your own head in those kinds of ways.
I had a
you don't mind,
Kyle, go ahead.
But I'd put it like a bit of a limit too on how much you disappear inside the work of somebody else as well. Because I mean, why submit to one of our presses over any other press that's out there? And I think, well, for me, I mean, Sacha actually brought this up on the Small Machine Talks last time about how my publication of his work, Contemporary Meat, at first was kind of a piss off because it was more me in it than there was him. And I'm like, well, fuck yeah, there is. Like, you asked me to publish it for you, so I'm going to bring my particular vision to it as well, and it becomes a collaborative process. And so,
and in the end, very happy with that.
Yeah, and I'm very happy with it too. And I would also say that that I am trying to respond to the demands of the work, and that might not necessarily be in line with what the author wants so far as how they want their work to be encountered or framed or consumed, right? So,
well, I had the same thing with Sacha Archer when he submitted his event foam, and he had a little blurb with it, and I thought, oh no, it's too large, and I don't like the way it's done.
Nobody likes my essential visions.
Yeah, and so what I did was I reduced it to one line and then printed it so small it looked like a pencil mark across the page, and didn't ask him. So when he did look at it, he said, "Boy, you really edited that." Yeah, I did. But so it was, but it was sort of like a little slap in the face to me. Like, oh yeah, maybe I should have talked to him about it before I did this. Anyways, yeah, we have another learning moment, right?
No, Kyle's absolutely right. I mean, that's why you go to certain presses, because you want them to handle your work.
I want Amanda, if you wanted to jump in here and
share. Oh, sure. I'm a terrible designer. I'm awful at it. I don't do it. My husband, Charles, is a fantastic designer. He has a long history of, it goes back to like typesetting stuff for auto magazines and stuff like that. So he does all that. And he's a genius at fitting things in and sort of dealing with some of the eccentricities of the text that we are sent to originally. We always also send proofs to our writers. We never publish anything with or change anything without. For me, the important thing is to serve the work in their work. It has my aesthetic in that it's AngelHousePress, but AngelHousePress is also mainly about listening to what they want. Now we're not doing chapbooks now. A question of space. We only live in a 2-bedroom apartment, and we can't get there's only so much room. And I know John has a small space in some ways, but he's got books and chapbooks and stuff, ephemera everywhere, right? It's wonderful. But for us, we don't do chapbooks currently, except for the small ephemera that I do of my own sort of handmade stuff that I hand out, say like 26 copies to friends. But I would say that especially things like the cover, I find if a writer doesn't like their cover, they won't promote the work. So, and I've been on the other end of that where publishers maybe done the cover without asking me, and I haven't really been that fond of it, or maybe done some line spacing changes that I didn't really want, and I haven't really, the chapbook's kind of gone to the bottom of my shelf, so I'd rather be very consultative with them and make sure they have what they want. But we didn't do a lot of variety in styles. We had basically legal, landscape folded over, or the standard chapbook size, and we didn't do a lot. I mean, I would have liked to have had the time to do that. I'm 57, so I'm feeling like I only have so much time left. But I love the work by all of the presses that I've been published by a couple of them too. So, and they all could like to have both Kyle and Sacha, who published my work. They both consulted with me quite a bit. Sacha had an idea for the Book of Ruth for the Vispo Bible, where he did this gold. I had some idea for the cover, but he said, no, but I've got this really cool gold. Here it is, the cover for the Book of Ruth. And it's really wonderful. It kind of goes with kind of the Bible and some of the aspects of that as well. So, and people always love it. One person who bought it at the Small Press Fair said she was going to hang it up on like a clothesline type thing. So I don't know whether she'll open it up and look inside, but you know, at least the cover is there. But yeah, so they both. And Kyle did the Book of John in this very small, beautiful cover. I can't remember the material you used, Kyle, but it was really lovely. I love the contribution of the others to the process. But I don't have the skill to do that kind of fancy dancing with my print stuff. So and Charles doesn't have the time. So
what happened to question 2? Question 2 was a good one from Franco, and it disappeared again.
Oh, so you know what? Yeah, we can go back to the Q&A. So let's bring it up to everyone. I see Derek already answered, but what's the least bookish object each of you have made? What's an object you really wanted to make, but cost or Euclidean space are pushing against it?
Because I was curious what everyone would have to offer with that one. Because I know Sacha's done some oddball things. I know I've done some oddball stuff.
I have contemporary meat sitting here, which is probably my most unconventional one, and it's like packed like a piece of, you know, meat, and it's all like sliced. So I wanted to imply like deli meat tied with butcher's twine or whatever. But it has a little sticker on the back that says you can read it online, and the URL to almost discourage people from unwrapping it unless they really wanted to.
I don't think people need discouraged. I'm sure nobody's opened it.
Well, I don't know. I have 2, and one was open and one has remained sealed. And I think it's really fun to like flip through it too, and you lose track of what order they're supposed to be in, and it's a whole different experience, right? But yeah, I've published stuff to CDs. We do a lot of like mixed media work where the digital aspect is available through our website, but you get like the print aspect when you buy the chapbook or whatever. And so yeah. Not trying to go too deep in one direction, but to find the productive space in between them, right?
Yeah, for sure. John, do you want to go next?
Yeah, I got rather obsessed with discovering spray painted stencils. So that's probably my oddest form of publication at this point is concrete on concrete out in the city.
And I love that you see that as publishing.
Well, it is.
You know?
It's printmaking.
Yeah, but I could see other people saying it's not very easily.
But yeah, well,
so
and
glad that you.
It would be nice to have it all documented in print too, right? Because it's very transitory. Most of the stuff that goes up comes down again very quickly. So it kind of it's almost a virtual space, right? Because it's very, very temporary. But photography, the results from it is interesting too, which becomes a project unto itself. It just snowballs.
Sacha, what about you?
You think that small press publishing is ephemeral? Try spray paint and graffiti.
Yeah. Yeah. You get the occasional interesting addition.
Yeah, it's all open to that, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's like an open publishing. Like other people can enter into it and play around if you like.
It's been fun taking from the graffiti world too. Graffiti that's long gone, but has been documented in photographs, and then cutting stencils of it and putting it back on the wall.
Sacha, do you want to share for you? What is the kind of like, what is that object for you? The least bookish object that you've made?
Yeah, I don't know. There was a CD that I did was wrapped in origami. That was some sound poem.
Earl.
In the bath, remember? You were
In
in
the
the bath.
bath, Wave, Virginia Woolf. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, that might have been it. I mean, I have maybe like the most bookish book, is Vladimir Bilik's, which is, I don't know if you can't really see it, but it's made up of other just random book pages. And then his work is actually on labels within it. So maybe like my most book is my least book.
Very cool. Amanda, what about you?
Okay, well, I mentioned already because we do a lot of digital stuff, so we have the videos, I guess, but also for my ephemeral stuff that I give away and sometimes I put out at small press fairs, I had something called Pomaceuticals, and it was, I basically took old bottles of like Tylenol and stuff, and I didn't include any pills in them. I just like I painted them up, and then I have like little poems inside. And I was also thinking about John, I don't know, I remember the little photo the film canisters and those little
yeah, that's what I was thinking of.
Industrial
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that was a good thing. Yeah, so and then I guess the most bookish book, I guess, well, you know, for a while we were doing AngelHousePress, which is it's an imprint of AngelHousePress, but it was our prose issue, our prose imprint. And what we were trying to do is we were doing basically the covers were all the same, so they were red, and then we had this pitchfork as our logo on the back, and we did that for about 4 years, and then one of them is No Guns, No Knives, No Disco Biscuits by Misty Rainwater Lights Creative Nonfiction Flash. But the company that made the paper, which is kind of like sparkly and red on the outside, it has they stopped making it. We couldn't find the paper anywhere, so we had to switch to like a white, like a cream cover with a kind of a red sort of like mylar paper on the inside. But that's what I have to say about that, I guess.
Thanks. And Brian, what about you?
Oh, I don't know what part of my career we should be talking, or I should be talking from, whether it's Phenomenon Press and all that in the 70s, and then under which edition in the 80s, and Noir Z now. We've done so many bizarre, marvelous things. I have to admit right now, I'm really into photography and playing with that. I've been making fold-out books. I'm working against the idea, the rather rigid ideas of what a photograph should look like. And there's a lot of claptrap about this. It has to be perfectly clear, the details here and blah, blah, and on and all these little rules, right? Well, the first thing I want to do is screw that up. And so what I do when I take a shoot, take a roll of 24 and I shoot various things. I spent a whole summer just doing, we have a building next to us that has very strange and weird windows. So and a ledge. So I've been sticking things in the ledge and taking photographs. The latest one being a bunch of balloons. And some of them are completely out of focus, and then they come into completely strict focus. So putting all that together so it reads like a narrative, because we're so narrative trained. We make narrative almost in everything that we look at or do or whatever. And so I've been playing with that. In terms of historical, God, there's so many books and so many crazy things. One small piece that came out of Noir Z was a reprint of Frances Crook's Dig Oubliette. I did not know anything about her until it was brought into the press and looked at it, and I really like it. I like the idea that something was published a long time ago, got forgotten, and we have redone it, and it looks impressive. It's good looking, and it's something you'll want to have and hold and get on with it.
Thanks so much. And Derek, I don't know if anyone or if everyone can see the answer that you typed out. So maybe do you want to just share it?
Sure. An early publication I did was one word. Basically, I think one of the things I tried to do is when I started this was kind of figure out, it was kind of like, will it blend? what runs through my printer, or what can I rubber stamp on, or what ink does this piece of paper actually hold, and what will smear, and so I rubber stamped on a series of Fig Newton cookies. But I also remember doing things like I had bought a new printer. I had a laser printer which works on heat, right? And so I had run it of 8.5 by 11. So now it was just walk around the house and what will go through the printer. And paper bags will go through the printer, no problem. Tin foil will go through the printer, no problem. Saran wrap does not go through the printer. It will go in, but it will come out as strings of goo. So it was just like that kind of learning process of what does the poem need and what can you print on? And I think and then you start thinking bigger. Then you start running into things like what John's doing. It's like, fuck it, I'm going to print on the wall. I'm going to, outside, and start seeing that as publishing into something bigger, stranger, weirder. On what the piece demands. I think that's really it's for learning.
That's awesome. It's like, what can you print on, or what can't you print on? So that
also, I think it's a part of us. We don't think straight. Like that. It's not a problem. It's just the way that my little head works. And as I look around at a number of people and what is being published and put out there, that a lot of people do not think straight, and this is fantastic. I mean, let's curve it a bit, or how can we mix this up? Like, I love the idea, Derek, of you just pushing things to the printer and see what works. I think that's wonderful. Playtime in a way, It happens to be in a literary frame, sort of. Not even a frame, that's broken too. But
it's odd though that you say it's not straight, because I find it a very straight path. One idea.
Of course you would. It seems straight to the person who's thinking it,
It does. It feels completely, yes, it feels right. It feels right.
Logical sequence.
We have other great questions coming in. So another one is, this panel is titled Pushing the Boundaries. What are some of the boundaries you find in a small press scene that you are pushing against?
Blandness.
Prize culture.
What?
Prize culture.
Whoa. Yeah, how people's bios read anymore. Oh
yeah, wow.
What you do, and now it's like what you supposedly want.
I think that I'd like to think that this type of publishing should push against the idea that it's exclusive, that you can't do it yourself, that you need someone else to do it. Of course you can do it yourself. And that to me, like the assumptions of small press, not only that you need somebody else to publish your work, but also that that self-publishing is somehow seen as uncool or inappropriate or whatever. And of course it's fine. You don't have to do it exclusively, but yeah, self-publishing is fine, and it's not a degenerate book, and that small press publishing is not an exclusive task. Anyone can do it.
I think I just want to sometimes get people to think about what it is to read, like just holding the objects themselves. I think most people are just used to that basic format of the book, and reading is this very constructed ritual. So I just want people to pick up these books, and from that point, just picking it up, to be challenged and have to figure it out from there.
Also, too, that a person's idea can actually come out into the world. It's it's not constricted by, oh, this is the way you have to write, or this is the way it has to look, and blah blah blah, all this stuff. You can do this, and it goes out, and it's a really great place for those creativities that don't at first appear regulated or fit into a box or something, that there's an outlet for this type of idea. There's an outlet for that kind of play, and you can do it. You can put it out there.
Yeah.
For sure.
Kyle, what about you?
Well, I mean, most recently, I think, I guess, well, over the course of the press, I've been focusing a lot on materiality and what can be and can't be considered like a literary object. But I don't necessarily think I'm the only person doing that, and I don't conceive of myself as like really pushing boundaries in that direction. What I think the Blasted Tree has to offer small press that I don't really see elsewhere is that we put everything online. So I'm trying to push against like boundaries of access to the limited print runs. Like we're all book people, right? Like I love the ephemeral print object, and I personally want to build a collection of those things, and I'm also willing to pay money for those things, right? But you know, I grew up with the internet around me, and like music and media is just free and it's everywhere. And so I want literature to be that too. I don't want my 50 chapbooks to sell out and then that's the end of that project so far as, you know, the readership is concerned. I love the idea that you can put something online that can be treasured or archived into perpetuity and that anyone can access it.
Great, thank you. And Amanda?
Well, I think I'd like to pick up on what Derek was saying. And first, I also want to mention that Derek also published a great little leaflet of mine, Revelation from the Visible Bible as well. I didn't mean to forget you there, Derek. Sorry about that. But so many publications, so little time. Just kidding. But yeah, I think I'd like to pick up on. Derek said he publishes what he'd like to read, and I think that's a good point. But when in Ottawa, when I first started to get involved in the literary community, it was very white and very male. And so one of the issues for me is I was reading a lot of poetry, Irving Layton, Seymour Maine, and stuff that I was exposed to. And so what I like to do is push my own boundaries by trying to go further. And I could say that at first the press was very white. I think that a lot of things we published were my friends and people that I knew, and I didn't have much exposure to people outside of my own cultural group. So I've been getting more and more exposure, thanks a lot to the social media and the internet and different collectives too. Like there's a collective in Britain called the Crested Tit, a group of feminist artists and writers, and there's a BIPOC printmakers and bookmaking group out of the USA run by Primrose Press. So I think like I have to extend my own boundaries and I have to do a lot of exploring. I may not know what I like to read yet. I may not have been exposed to it because we've been so, I mean, God, I just like, I keep seeing things shared on social media and it's like page after page of recommendations of stuff by men all the time, stuff by white men. And I mean, there's others too, like that share other things, but you have to really look out and you really have to go out of your way to find, in some cases, stuff that's not just by that. And look at this panel. I mean, we're all white. You know, I mean, where's the other people in the small press? In Ottawa, there's 21 small presses. There's 11 run by women, and there's 4 BIPOC presses, including the magazines too. So, I mean, you know, there are other people doing stuff. I'd like to get to know them. And I think that's where my boundaries have to be pushed.
Thanks so much for that, Amanda. And I think both you and Brian also mentioned this at the beginning, kind of the desire to have your press be inclusive and to publish, you know, a variety of different people of different backgrounds and experiences. So kind of how, do you have any suggestions or advice from your own experience of how to make that possible?
A general call out for anybody who's watching this and who know people who are doing, I hate the experimental, God almighty, I hate that. Anyway, to send us a submission or send us a note to say, hey, I'm doing this stuff. I you know, wave your hand out there. Part of this is my age. I don't go out as much, and especially this COVID moment, but like to meeting other people who are doing or may want to do this type of work and getting to say, oh, we got fine. There's a space here. I'd like to see it. Show me something. Just show me something, right? from whomever. I mean, I'd hardly wait.
And Amanda?
Oh, I've forgotten what the question was, Tali. Sorry.
Oh, that's okay. Like in your role, kind of, how can you in your role make it more inclusive and kind of open to diverse voices?
Well, I think part of the answer to that is community. It's building community. It's getting to know different communities outside of maybe the community that you're in, and amplifying voices. Like I'm someone who lives way too much on social media as it is, but yes. So I think it's trying to get out there, and also doing things like crowdsourcing things or crowd. I have like a list of visual poets presses and stuff like that available, and a map of women and gender nonconforming visual poets, and asking for contributions from people as well, and just finding out who's out there. And one thing I like about the small press community is we can share resources and information. Like, it doesn't have to be something we just keep to ourselves. I think when I first got involved in the small press, it seemed like there were some, like it was a very friendly group, but sometimes it felt like people had like little secrets about where they did things and how they did things. And then later on, people started to open up about, once I got to know them, about different things. So, and I think it's a matter of really sharing information and finding stuff out.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah, that is a really great point. And I completely agree. Like, there is no reason that we shouldn't all collaborate. We're part of the same community and collective, and we're stronger when, we all put our minds together. We're quickly running out of time. So we have one more question in the Q&A, which I'll ask everyone. Have you created or published books/objects intending them to be more or maybe differently ephemeral than usual?
What? What's that question again?
Have any of you created/published books or objects intending them to be more or maybe differently ephemeral than usual?
Yeah, let's go back to the Welcome to Concrete stencils and that's definitely a different intentionality.
Just released an edition of petals, like pressed petals that are stamped. I mean, I was inspired by Kate Siklosi and Sophia Ann Edwards and their work with like organic materials, but like a little petal.
Oh, I
it's
love that.
So it'll last for a while, but eventually this is gonna like break down. It'll lose its color, but it's only sort of meant to have its organic life cycle, and that's it. That's the end, right?
I love that piece.
Yeah.
I think it's just such a great idea.
I own that.
Really? No, but it speaks to so much there. It speaks to environmental things, essential awareness of environmental things. Take a look at this panel. Oh, there's writing on it. I mean, the whole thing is just great. Go for it.
Yeah, that's great. Did anyone else want to share their answers before?
Sure. I mean, edition sizes will vary, kind of depending on the readership you imagine or who you're trying to reach out to. It might be bigger or unlimited or open, or it might just be 2 or 3 copies for a specific reason. I don't think that there's any. You might settle into a typical print run for you, but what I find is what becomes very typical is the atypicality of it. That very quickly it's like there's no standard, and so of course the increased or decreased ephemerality of publications will just depend on whether the audience size or how many pieces of paper you have to work on, or what you're planning on printing. Why?
Thanks so much. So unless anyone else wanted to share their final thoughts or have the last word in, then I believe it is time for us to wrap up. Okay, well, this was an incredible afternoon that flew by so quickly. Thank you so much to our panelists for sharing their thoughts, insights, and expertise with us, and for continuing to inspire all of us here to challenge conventions Thank you to everyone that joined us this afternoon and for making the chat also an especially lively place. It was such a pleasure to have you here with us. If you haven't done so yet, then I highly encourage you to check out our panelists' featured titles at the Meet the Presses Market, which I believe was shared in the chat, and as well as their websites to see all of the work that they're doing. While today's events are done, coming up tomorrow at 12 p.m. is the Magazines and Journals panel, and at 2 p.m. is the Small Press and the Craft of Bookmaking panel. So we hope you will join us then as well. So with that said, have a wonderful afternoon, and we hope to see you all very soon. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks,
Great
Tali.
to see everybody here too. Take
Thanks,
care.
everyone.
See you, Derek,
Thanks,
Kyle,
audience.
Sacha,
Good night,
John,
Moon.
Amanda,
Good night, Moon.
Tali. Bye-bye. Really great to see you all.
Bye.